Greetings to all of you. Before I begin this video, I want to thank all of you in this community, all of you who have subscribed to my channel, all of you who are patrons, all of you who join in and watch these videos. It has been profound to get your comments, your feedback, to be in discussion groups with some of you, to feel the consciousness of this community and the love and the support that is there with and for each other. We are a part of this global network of those of us who are actively moving into higher consciousness and holding that energy of love to support the shifts in this time. So thank you. It is such an intense time on the planet, and we're feeling the turbulence of that. We're seeing the final gasps of the power over paradigms playing out in a very dramatic way on the planet and in a very destructive way, where it's about ego and violence and war and power over and deceit and injustice. And as we see that playing out in the third dimensional reality, we need to remember that we as humanity right now are in the fourth dimension. This is the dimension of thought and emotion. This is the time in which we're being encouraged to look at the lens through which we see reality, the cosmology, the ways in which we are perceiving ourselves, each other, and what's going on the planet. This is part of the profound shift that we're in, coming out of the end of the Kali Yuga that's ending at the end of this month. The Kali Yuga has been this period of 6,000 years where we've been in these paradigms of increasing disconnection, separation, forgetting our connection with Source, forgetting our oneness with each other and all that is. And as we're leaving the Kali Yuga and moving into ascending consciousness, we are seeing all of those paradigms of the past that are so destructive, that are needing to clear, that are needing to heal and be released. And I think we're feeling this individually in our own lives. What's needing to heal? What's needing to clear so that we can move into fifth dimensional consciousness, that dimension of living from the heart, of moving into expanding consciousness. We're in that shift right now, and we can feel often that we're straddling the worlds. Being in this fourth dimension, we are being asked to consciously look at our thoughts and emotions. I love what Joe Dispenza says, that where your attention goes is where your energy goes. So if we're caught in focusing on the turmoil in the world and the third dimensional paradigms of violence and destruction, then we're getting pulled into those energies and fueling them. And it's not about overriding what's going on or pretending it isn't happening to somehow do a spiritual bypass into the fifth dimension. No, I think part of the challenge right now is honoring that we're in this fourth dimensional reality, being guided to clear and heal our attachment to those old paradigms, are the ways in which we are blocked or mired in the wounds from the past, our ancestral wounds, our personal wounds, the collective history that we've been through. We're being supported in clearing that to move more fully into that fifth dimensional energy of love and compassion, truth, authenticity, justice. So as we're in this time and as we are straddling these dimensions and moving into higher consciousness, the more that we can keep coming back to our center, coming back to our hearts, holding the awareness of the shifts that we're in and envisioning and energizing what we're moving into, the more we are supporting that healing energy on the planet. And again, that is some of what I'm so profoundly grateful for in this community and how we're holding that and supporting each other and being in this profound time of healing and transformation. This month, March of 2025, from my perspective, is the most intense and transformational time that I've experienced in my lifetime, energetically and astrologically. And I'd like to give it an overview of the shifts that we're moving through in these final weeks in March, and then do a deeper dive into what's going on in the Venus cycle this month and what it means that Neptune is moving into Aries at the end of the month. But let me give an overview first. This month has been so profound. We have just experienced the total lunar eclipse on March 14th. I found that eclipse profoundly moving and healing and transformational. The day after that eclipse, Venus went into the underworld, went into being invisible as she was moving into her conjunction with the sun. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Then on March 20th, we are going to experience the spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere, the autumnal equinox in the Southern Hemisphere. So here in the Northern Hemisphere, that's the energy of Aries from that seasonal cycle perspective, the time of new beginnings. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's the energy of Libra, but both hold that energy of the equinox, the balance of light and dark. And one of the things that I've been exploring more and more fully is how do we reweave the energies and wisdom of the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere back into unity with each other. And Jane Gleason White, an outstanding astrologer from Australia, and I have been co-facilitating a group from those around the globe that are exploring this process together. And Jane and I are going to begin some of that conversation in an interview in April. But I think that that time of the equinox is saying the light and dark are in balance. How are we bringing ourselves back into balance? Then on March 23rd, Venus goes into her exact conjunction with the sun, which is a very powerful time. And then on March 29th, we have the partial solar eclipse, another eclipse wake-up call. And what's extraordinary is, and I'll talk more about this in an upcoming video, but that partial solar eclipse, new moon, takes place at 9 degrees of Aries. And the meaning of that Sabian symbol is we're discovering new paradigms for old symbols. We're moving into new forms for old symbols and understandings. This is a time when we're moving into new paradigms, the new paradigms of the Aquarian age, new forms, new ways of being. And this partial solar eclipse new moon is guiding us in that. On March 30th, Neptune moves into Aries for the first time. And I'll talk more about that later in this video. And then March 31st, Venus emerges from the underworld and reveals herself and rises as a morning star in the eastern sky. What I would like to explore is how this sequence, the synchronicity of these astrological configurations, of these energies, are so profoundly guiding us in how we can move through this shift from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, out of the Kali Yuga into ascending consciousness, out of third dimensional reality through fourth dimensional reality into fifth dimensional reality. Part of what I'm more and more in awe of, in a sense of wonder about, is the stories of the planets, the way their energies, their consciousness, the way that they are reflections of cosmic consciousness, the way in which the love and wisdom of the cosmos, the love and wisdom of our earth are guiding us, supporting us, showing us the way to move out of this time of darkness and forgetting and low level of consciousness through this time of healing into ascension, into unity consciousness. They are so guiding the way. And in these final weeks of March, we have an exquisite unfolding of that I'd like to try to begin to unpack a little bit in this video, in particular by talking more in depth about the profound meaning of the Venus cycle and this Venus cycle in particular, and how then it's followed by Neptune's movement into Aries and Neptune's moving into conjunction with Saturn. And they will move into a conjunction in Aries beginning in May when Saturn moves into Aries for the first time. And then they will be in an exact conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries in February 2026. So I want to give an overview of that also, and we'll continue to follow that as that unfolds across the next year. But let's talk more about these powerful weeks as we're moving through March and the ending of March. First, let me talk more about the significance of this Venus cycle and the messages that we're being given as Venus is moving into her conjunction with the sun and then rising as a morning star. I've talked about this in past videos, but I want to explain more in depth why this Venus cycle is so important for us. Remember, in the cycle of Venus, she is an evening star for approximately 9 months. Then she goes into her inferior conjunction with the sun and re-emerges then as a morning star. She remains in that morning star phase, rising before the sun in the eastern sky for 9 months. Then she goes into her superior conjunction, moving behind the sun from our Earth perspective, and then reappears as an evening star. This full cycle takes approximately 584 days. It takes 8 years for Venus to return to the original configuration that she's in relationship with the Earth and Sun. So in your own chart, think about the Venus return every 8 years in your life, when I think whatever those issues that Venus carried around your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, gets reactivated every 8 years. This cycle is written about in the ancient myth of Inanna, coming out of ancient Sumer, is our oldest known written myth. And what's profound about this myth is that it comes out of the time of the age of Taurus, which was 4000 BCE to 2000 BCE, Remember that we started into the Kali Yuga as we moved into the age of Taurus. We then move from the age of Taurus into the age of Aries. From the age of Aries is 2000 BCE to 0 CE. Then we've been in the age of Pisces the last 2000 years. We came to the lowest level of the Kali Yuga, this time of forgetting, this time of lower level of consciousness, where we get caught in power over paradigms, destructive ways of being. The lowest level of that was in the age of Aries. So it's why I've often talked about how it's these out of balance paradigms from the age of Aries that we need to clear to move into the age of Aquarius and move into ascending consciousness, move into higher consciousness. So we're coming out of this cycle of descending consciousness into remembering, into reclaiming the capacity of our consciousness, into remembering who we truly are and what we're capable of being, how to come back into our true selves, how to come back to our hearts, how to come back to right relationship with each other, with ourselves, with all of life. So this myth of Inanna, it comes out of a more ancient oral tradition, but was written approximately 3000 BCE, as we're beginning to see the shifts moving towards the age of Aries. And a lot of that is encoded in the myth. And I'm going to put a lot of links below for added resources. And so I'll put a link below if you want to actually read the translation of that myth by Diane Wolkenstein and Kramer. Brilliant translation of the story. So this myth is describing the shifts of the ages and the turmoil that unfolds as you move from one age to another, which is what we're experiencing now. But we're experiencing it as a process on steroids. We're experiencing it in a more intense way because we're also coming out of the Kali Yuga and moving into higher consciousness. Some of you have been confused about the Hindu Yuga cycle and the length of these phases in the Yuga cycle. And I don't want to go into a deeper dive of explaining why the Hindu Yuga cycle is a 24,000 year cycle, as is the precessional cycle. They are describing the same process that we go through in our human evolution on the planet. But I highly recommend the brilliant book Yuga Shift by Bibhu Dev Misra. He has done such deep research into the Vedic texts and describes what that longer version of the Yuga cycle is about, but how the one that we're actually living in our evolution of consciousness as humanity on the planet is a 24,000 year cycle and is ending at the end of March. It's his research that I base that on. And it's a profound book. So that myth of Inanna was talking about that shift from the age of Taurus to the age of Aries, but it's also a beautiful description of the Venus cycle and her journey from Queen of Heaven, evening star in the west, setting after the sunset, to this underworld journey where she's in her inferior conjunction with the sun, between the earth and the sun, disappears from view, and then rises in the east as a morning star. That time where she rises in the east as a morning star is the most intense time of the Venus cycle. It is when she's at her brightest, when she emerges from the underworld and rises before sunrise in the east. The Mayans saw this as a very powerful, intense time. Anytime a planet is at its brightest, that is its most transformational time in the cycle. And in the Venus cycle, it is her emergence from the underworld. Let me describe a little bit more of the story of the myth of Inanna and how significant this is for us because of this particular Venus cycle. Allow yourself to absorb the story. The planets are speaking to us not through facts and data, not through our left brains. They guide us through story, through myth, through symbols. They guide us to listen with our hearts, to be transformed by them. So the Venus cycle, the myth of Inanna. Inanna is queen of heaven. And Inanna hears the call of the great below. She hears the call of the great below. This is symbolic of when we're here on the earth plane in our personality self, we can lose connection with that deeper understanding of our soul selves, who we truly are, why we're here, what our path and purpose is. So Inanna, as queen of heaven, ruling over her kingdom. Remember, Venus, Inanna, was the primary deity in the age of Taurus, ruled by Venus. She realizes, I've got all of this power and identity and recognition, but something's missing. I need to connect with some deeper part of myself. In this time of transition that we're in, we're all feeling that need to dive deep into our own inner process to realign with our soul selves. Inanna hears the call of the great below and sets forth to do this underworld journey, to do this deep dive, to reclaim the lost parts of herself, to come into more clarity about who she is and what her journey is about. But she's also trying to reconnect with her lost sister, Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld. Now, the interesting thing is Ereshkigal, her sister, was the great grain goddess, really associated with that energy of the earth mother, who nurtures us, sustains us, supports us. The fact that Inanna, queen of heaven, is now separated from Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld, the great goddess, is showing us how we've moved into this split and this time of duality and polarity, so that the energy of the heavens and the earth are split. And Inanna wants to heal that. In more ancient times, in times of more ascended consciousness, we realized heaven and earth are all part of a unified whole. As above, so below. As it is outside of us, so it is within us. It's all a part of a unified whole. But Inanna's realizing we've gotten caught in polarity. We've gotten caught in duality. We need to reweave the wholeness and the oneness. So she sets out on this journey to reclaim those lost parts of herself and her reconnection with her sister, the great goddess of the earth. She doesn't go on her journey without calling her friend Ninshabar to join with her, to be her companion, and to support her if her underworld journey goes awry and she needs help. Ninshabar is the planet Mercury. Remember that. So Venus joins with Ninshabar, sets out on this journey, comes to the gates of the underworld. And as she journeys into the underworld, the guardian of the underworld tells her she has to give up all these old ways of identification, all these old forms, all these ways that she has identified herself and her power and her position and who she is. It's like being called to dissolve those aspects of our personality that no longer serve us. What are we needing to release? to actually reclaim that true, authentic core essence of who we are. So Inanna goes through this journey of letting go of all these symbols of power, all of these ways she's identified herself, until she's stripped naked and is in the underworld facing her sister, Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal is enraged that her sister has been living in all of this prominence as Queen of Heaven, and she's been raped and banished and pushed into the underworld. So she looks at her sister with a stare of hatred, and Inanna dies. And then her corpse is put on a meat hook in the underworld. Meanwhile, Ereshkigal, who is pregnant, goes into birth pains and goes into labor pains. Ninshabar, the friend of Inanna, when she realizes she hasn't returned, she goes and gets help. She goes from place to place and finally gets help from Enki, the god of the sweet waters, the god of wisdom, who knows how to move between the worlds. Enki is Saturn. This will be important later. Enki, Saturn, sends these earth creatures to go through the cracks into the lower world, to come to Inanna, to resuscitate her, to revive her, to bring her back to life. But before doing that, they honor that Ereshkigal is in pain and in her own crisis, and they hold sacred space for her. They mirror her pain. They hold her in her birthing process, and in that compassion, and help her heal, and then they revive and help Inanna heal. Saturn sends these energies to heal both Ereshkigal and Inanna. Inanna comes on her journey now back out of the underworld. She has gone through this death, resurrection. She emerges from the underworld now, renewed, restored, revived, resurrected. And the energies of the underworld come with her. And she comes into this new life, this new form, this new way of being. And those energies of the underworld say, well, someone else needs to take your place now that you have left the underworld. And they end up calling on Mars, Inanna's consort, husband, partner, Mars, Dumuzi in the story, to do his own underworld journey, to be in his own transformational process. Because as Inanna's been in the underworld, Dumuzi's taken over her reign and her power and is caught in a kind of power over dynamic of being in control. And they say, oh, no, you too need to do your transformation underworld journey. And he does his own journey to then rise and reconnect with Venus, with Inanna in a new way. So this whole story of Inanna, of the Venus cycle, is about transformation, is about healing, moving out of old paradigms into new ways of being. And how incredible is it that as we're coming to the end of the Kali Yuga, as it's ending this month, that the Venus cycle, Inanna, Venus, is guiding us in how to do that journey. What it means for us is as Venus goes into the underworld, and she's gone into the underworld now as of March 15th, and will be invisible from view until March 31st. This 2-week period is such a profound time for us to hear the call of the great below, to look at the inner work that we need to do to heal, to reclaim the lost parts of ourselves, to look at those ways in which we can try to heal our relationships with others that have been ruptured. It's also about how can we come back into right relationship with our Earth Mother, the great goddess, Ereshkigal, symbolic of the great grain goddess, the Earth Mother who feeds us, has birthed us, guides us, is helping us in this time of transformation. We need to face her and how we have banished her and how we have disconnected from her and raped her and been destructive to her. She is asking us to face that and to heal that collectively as humanity. That's a part of our healing journey. Healing ourselves, healing our relationships with each other, healing our relationship with the earth. And as Venus emerges as a morning star on March 31st, she rises in the sign of Pisces. Compassion, love, remembering our oneness. But here's the extraordinary thing, and I want to show this to you in the chart. As Venus disappears from view, which happens when Venus is within 13 degrees of the sun, as she's disappearing from view, has sunk below the horizon, is no longer an evening star, has disappeared from the sky. She is conjunct Mercury, Ninshabar. Ninshabar is with Inanna. Mercury is with Venus as Venus is in her journey to the underworld. Mercury is going retrograde, is going from being direct to being retrograde, to be the companion to Venus as she's retrograde, as she's sinking closer and closer into her inferior conjunction with the sun. Ninshabar, Mercury, is right there to support her and guide her. They continue in that journey. And when we get to March 22nd, March 23rd, when Venus goes exactly conjunct the sun at 2 degrees of Aries, Ninshabar is holding space, is holding that compassion, protection, support for Venus, for Inanna, as she's in her encounter in the underworld and going through her transformation. And interestingly, I would see Ereshkigal, the great grain goddess, as the asteroid Ceres. Ceres is the Roman name for Demeter, and the Inanna story, as we move into the time of ancient Greece, morphs into the Demeter Persephone story, with Demeter as the Earth Mother, Demeter, the grain goddess. She's now in Pisces as this drama is unfolding. As we come to March 28th, just one day before the partial solar eclipse, Saturn has now moved into a 5-degree conjunction with Venus. Enki, Saturn, is sending help to Inanna, who's in her death, rebirth, her death transformational process in the underworld, now at 29 degrees of Pisces, exactly conjunct Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces. Enki, Saturn, that great shaman, the god of sweet waters who knows how to move between the worlds, is sending support. And Ninshabar, Mercury, is continuing to hold space. Now on March 31st, as Venus is now 13 degrees from the sun, emerging as a morning star. She emerges at 27 degrees of Pisces, exactly conjunct the North Node at 27 degrees of Pisces. Compassion, love, reclaiming that integration of the polarities. Inanna, Venus, has reclaimed her lost parts of herself. She's come into wholeness, is emerging in a new way, and is under the care of Enki, Saturn, conjunct Venus and the North Node. And Ninshubar greets her companion as she emerges, and they both emerge together in the early morning sky in the east, just before sunrise. And as Venus emerges as a morning star, she's in a trine with Mars in Cancer, helping them together to remember that energy of compassion, of love, of coming from the heart, of letting go of duality, letting go of polarities, coming back into right relationship. And then it's extraordinary. 2 weeks later, April 15th, Ceres, Ereshkigal, moves into conjunction with Venus, a 5-degree orb, and is reconciled, reunited. We are being supported to come back into right relationship with the earth. We are being guided to remember who we are, remember our deep interdependence and interconnectedness with the earth, and heal that relationship. Ceres, Venus, Saturn, the North Node, Mercury, all in this powerful stellium as we move into April. And they will be in that tight stellium and conjunction with each other through the end of April. And at this time, they are now in a grand trine with Mars and with the moon. And in the sky at that powerful time when Venus emerges as a morning star, she will be in the stars of Pisces, next to Mercury and Neptune and Saturn, rising before the sun, and guiding us to remember the wisdom of Pisces, unity consciousness, oneness coming from compassion. And to remember, this is in the part of the sky called the waters, to remember our deep connection with the waters of Mother Earth, that, as Veda Austin would say, are liquid light, and hold that memory of the memories of the earth and the memories and awareness of cosmic consciousness. We're being called to dive into those waters, reclaim the remembrance of who we are, reclaim our remembrance of our connection with the earth and sky and all that is, melt away the divisions and destructive patterns and paradigms of the past, and the divisions that we get caught into with duality and polarization, and come back into oneness. It is profound how this Venus cycle is so unique in terms of those conjunctions with Mercury, with Saturn, moving into conjunction with Ceres, the healing story of what we're being guided into, the journey of healing and transformation is literally playing out in the sky and guiding us in how we can live that within ourselves. As above, so below. We are at one with the earth and sky. And as we connect to these energies and honor them and let them guide us, they're supporting us in this journey of moving into the deep journey of the underworld, moving into that transformation of our sense of selves, moving through that healing process to rise anew in new forms, in new ways, and in right relationship with ourselves, each other, and the earth. And this then gets activated and accentuated and accelerated by Neptune's movement into Aries, March 30th. New forms, new ways of being, new beginnings in the energy of Neptune, the great waters, the remembrance, the mystical understanding of our oneness and coming from our hearts with compassion. I will follow up on this with a second video talking more about those energies of Neptune in Aries moving into conjunction with Saturn, and how that then is taking us into the next phase of our healing journey and ascension into higher consciousness, into fifth dimensional ways of being. But thank you again for being a part of this community, for holding these energies that are guiding us, being conscious of them, opening to them, letting them inform us, reshape us, guide us. These currents of cosmic consciousness, if we, as the Hopi describe in their prophecy, if we allow ourselves to let go of the shore and those paradigms of the past that we've clung to give us a sense of security, if we, like Inanna, let those old ways of being be stripped away that no longer serve us, then we can be carried in these currents with these energies of the earth and sky guiding us through our own journey, like Inanna, of death to the ways of the past and the old sense of identity into a new form, a new way of being, and higher consciousness, and coming from our hearts with compassion and courage and authenticity to be moving into the Aquarian age and the energies of truth and justice and compassion and love. Blessings and love to all of you. Blessed be.